Have you ever found yourself blaming everybody and you just find yourself in this boat that you just can't get out, the boat of failure and stagnation? This is Dr. Spencer. Today I'm going to talk to you about don't justify and think rationally. The importance of thinking rationally to get out of this story of blaming. You know, this is what it boils down to. If you find yourself repeating mistakes, failing over and over again, getting frustrated with your situation, most of us tend to blame circumstance or people. And that gets us nowhere. Because it's just a racket, a story running in your mind over and over and over again. And what does that do? It brings you down. You begin to feel worse and worse about the situation. Because it's very easy to point the finger, but when you point the finger, as they say, you have one finger pointing at someone or something, and three fingers pointing back at you. Self-responsibility. It's a misunderstood concept. It's not a guilt trip. It's not a punishment. The word responsibility is your ability to respond, your ability to take effective action, appropriate action to a circumstance or situation. And that means developing skills, communication skills, negotiation skills, organization skills, understanding skills, the discernment skills, courage. What happens is you see, we human beings take in information from our five senses, from what we see, hear, taste, touch, smell. Everything comes into our five senses, and then we interpolate. We interpret that energy, that information, and create meaning out of it. And the mind is a meaning-making machine. We're continually generating evaluations and determining and judging everything that comes into our lives as we perceive the world. And if we want to, say, escape reality in a sense of not take responsibility for ourselves, because maybe you're not a bad person, but you just don't know the answer. So you make something up. In other words, you create excuses as to why you can't succeed or move ahead in a situation that you're in, whether it's relationship or business, especially in business. Every entrepreneur knows that you take action. You have the vision already, but what do you do? What action do you take? And we all know, business people know that your business will go up and down, up and down. You have good times and bad times. You have abundance and poverty. You have weeks where you're getting an influx of money and clients, and you have weeks where nothing's being sold. Real estate agents understand this perfectly. Retail store owners understand this. There's always a slow time of week and a busy time of the week. Busy time of year and slow time of year. So when you get into these dynamics in life where you're in the lows and you're not getting back up to the high, and you're experiencing this kind of cycle of failure and frustration, it's very easy to point the finger because it's just a blind spot within you that you're not aware of. It's a natural defense mechanism to feel safe, to preserve oneself. The flight or fight response in the body does this. It's an automatic response to stress, to danger, to threat. We either run from it or we fight it, but there's also the freeze and fawn side of it, where we go into analysis paralysis and shut down our emotions and want to blend in with our environment, become very stoic. It's very difficult to relate to you if you're in the analysis paralysis, and you begin to hesitate. I know I've gone through this. And then there's the fawn response, where you become a people pleaser. You become a kiss ass. Nobody likes a kiss ass. You do this to basically survive. All of these dynamics of the flight, fight, freeze, or fawn is designed to help you to survive and keep you safe. And you get stuck in this feeling of fear because you feel powerless. And it's very easy to start to blame everybody. Blame people for your failure, for the situation you're in, and even worse, blame situations of which you have no control over. If that wasn't happening, I wouldn't be here. If COVID didn't happen, my business would be a success. We blame circumstance because it's easier to sit back and get stuck in the analysis paralysis to feel safe and comfortable, because comfort is an experience of certainty. We all want certainty. We want reliability. The chaos of COVID really screwed everything up in a sense of our sense of what will happen tomorrow, where things can simply change on a dime. You never know. But when we look around, businesses are still in operation, cars still start, people still go to work. Some things haven't changed at all. So blaming COVID, in other words, the mind creates this story. That's the blame, because it doesn't match our personal values, our ideals of how life should be. And then we begin to justify our disposition because we're not willing to take action, or we're not willing to learn a new skill. So for example, I'll share with you a story. Before COVID, I started my coaching practice, and I was getting clients, and it was really starting to build momentum. I felt really good about it. And I began to create a plan to speak at live seminars around my community in basically lecture halls and community centers. And I began to develop a marketing plan to advertise myself and let the community know what I can do for them. And then COVID hits and everything shuts down. And I started, oh my God, this is terrible. This God or somebody's creating this virus and is ruining every people's lives, it's ruining my life. And then I looked around, it's not just my life. All these businesses got shut down. These are everybody's businesses. And I began to rethink, I could blame COVID. Sure, I can blame COVID. It's COVID's fault. My chiropractic business just dropped. All my patients stopped coming in, even though chiropractic was still considered a necessary business. I blamed COVID. So what I began to realize, it doesn't matter how much I blame, because I didn't comprehend the situation. And once I began to just calm myself, instead of justifying being lazy or not taking any action, because that's what I did. What can I do? It's COVID. I can't do anything. I realized I can go online. I realized that Facebook and social media and Zoom meetings, everybody went to Zoom. This is my opportunity to relearn something. So I started taking social media marketing courses. And marketing really fascinated me. I began to develop a real interest in marketing, all of the dynamics of marketing, of how to connect with your target market. And I began to learn or develop this new kind of understanding and a different way of coaching and bringing coaching to the world, where I can create webinars and speak to a vast number of people by advertising my webinar online. So I learned a new skill. I changed my perspective and got out of the blame game and began to think rationally. See, this is the key to get out of the blame game. If you find yourself blaming everybody, you're not thinking clearly. And look at your own thoughts. Like literally write down those thoughts, and you'll begin to see that your thoughts are not rational. Then look at the actual context of those thoughts and try to reword them so that they are rational. For example, it's COVID's fault. Who is COVID? It just doesn't make sense. It's COVID's fault. Trump blamed China. And we now know Fauci funded the gain of research. Do I blame Fauci? It just doesn't make sense. How is Fauci responsible? How is China responsible? How is a virus responsible for my business going down? It doesn't make sense to think that over and over and over and drive myself into frustration and eventually shutting down. So I looked at that thought and realized, well, this doesn't make sense. Like Fauci or China or COVID's not an actual something in my life. It's not something that I can really control. It's not something that I can hold on to and move out of the way. What can I control? What can I do? what does make sense? The online marketing and learning to create videos like this. Got myself another camera, a microphone, and began to do these Facebook Lives and just sharing my thoughts. And it was my first time doing anything online and doing live videos. And I got really comfortable being on camera. And that's when I realized to think rationally, what can I do? What is real? What is tangible? What is measurable? What is quantifiable? What can I reproduce with the knowledge that I have? That's when I started to make online videos. So thinking rationally, look at your thoughts. Don't just justify it. Because if you're justifying, what you're doing is actually creating excuses. There's little integrity in justifying. Because justifying is really evading responsibility. And when you evade responsibility continuously over and over and over by justifying actions that have no integrity within them, no sense of honor, love, and respect within your actions, you begin to justify unhealthy habits, justifying drinking all the time, justifying sleeping in late, justifying not doing the work that you can and need to do to get ahead in your situation. You justify bad habits. Well, I just can't help myself. I love to eat, so I'm going to get diabetes. You're justifying. And you see how the justifying doesn't really produce results. It doesn't create solutions. Rather, thinking rationally. In other words, think about what dynamics are actually occurring that you have control over, that you can actually relate to in a sense of you can't grab onto everything, but you can measure the dynamics of life and be able to influence and change those dynamics. So I can change my degree of influence by going online rather than going in person to gyms, which is what I used to do. I used to talk to a whole lot of people in the gyms with the health information booth. And now I translated that onto online. So being rational, what can you do? What is possible? And what is actually happening rather than what you perceive to be happening and what you idealize to happen with the reality that is in conflict with your ideals, because maybe your ideals aren't rational. To make something rational is to put logic and reality. In other words, what can be measured, what can be controlled, what can be reproduced by recording the measurements and the quantifying of the dynamics. Time. That's the big one. You can measure time. You can measure the amount of tasks that you do in a day. You can measure that which you can delegate. You can measure what is more important. In other words, you can prioritize. In other words, when you start to think rationally, things begin to make sense. And you begin to have a clear picture and a clear understanding of what lies before you so you can take appropriate action. And that is the key. Thinking rationally is going to help you create an action plan that actually makes sense, that is doable, that is practical and pragmatic. This is Dr. Spencer Coaches. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'll respond. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I sure hope this helps. Thank you so much for listening.